Righto, so I'll kick us off. Our farm is in the Victorian Mallee, low rainfall, arid country, you get the gist. We're lucky to get 250 mils per year, loamy sand soils that are alkaline at about pH 8.2. We get saline soils after the wet years, but to be honest, our paddocks are pretty shit. They're not overly productive. Most cropping struggles here. Keeps me humble though. So I guess my big question is, what pasture options actually make this land useful and reliable for my livestock?
Given the soil type and rainfall, perennial forage shrubs are one of the best fits. Saltbush varieties such as Old Man Saltbush or River Saltbush, or then Blue Bush and Acacia, for example, are well adapted to sandy alkaline soils. They tolerate moderate salinity and survive drought. And if the soil does increase in salinity, we can always go with tall wheatgrass, as this tolerates salty soil really well. Ideally, we'd plant them in wide rows with around 6 metre spacings within the row and 10 metre spacings between rows. Then in the inter-row space, a pasture legume, such as a strand medic, can be sown, as this will help fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil, which can then be converted to plant-available nitrogen, which can be utilised by the perennial forage shrubs. Or alternatively, the inter-row space can be left for annuals to come through in better years. And ideally, I'd recommend planting as soon as possible after the break of season, so there is adequate moisture available to allow the plants to establish before summer.
Cheers, Em. Yeah, that makes sense. My main concern would be getting value from the land that's otherwise pretty marginal. If shrubs give me something to graze when the rest of the farm is bare, then I'm interested. As long as it doesn't turn into a glorified twig buffet. I'd want to know, what sort of feed base am I actually getting from them?
Good point. The shrubs themselves don't provide huge amounts of energy at once, more a slow, steady source of year-round nutrition. But where they do really step up is in your summer feed gap. Their growth gives you an excellent, reliable feed source. They're high in protein, sulphur, vitamins and minerals, so the saltier your ground is, the less efficient the plants are for your stock. Medic and grasses in the inter-row will complement the shrubs in the growing season, giving you substantial, high nutrient balanced feed, allowing the shrubs to become supplementary so they can sustain stock in the dry times. If you're sowing a pasture, that grazing will be a more substantial feed in this growing season, giving you the opportunity to rest the shrubs and draw on them in your feed gaps, as well as grazing your stubble if needed in summer too.
Thanks, Mon. Right, so they won't necessarily replace the annual pastures, but they can fill the feed gap. That'd help me cut down on hand feeding, especially in tough years. Hand feeding's fine for a week or two, but by week 8 you're questioning your life choices. I'd probably look at putting 20 to 30% of the farm, the least productive paddocks, into shrubs, and keep the better soils, if any, for cropping and pastures. Steve-O, up here.
Oh, there are wider environmental benefits too. Shrubs keep permanent cover on those fragile sandy soils and act as a windbreak, disrupting the flow of the wind across the land and reducing wind erosion. Perennial shrubs also have really deep roots. It reduces recharge and helps combat dryland salinity, which is a problem in these areas and that country out there. Also, over time they drop leaf litter and help build soil fertility by increasing organic matter, though that does happen very, very gradually. Managing the growth and consumption of these shrubs has to be done alongside using rainfall averages as trigger points to set stocking densities. If rainfall averages are below a certain level at a certain time of year, you need to drop your stocking density. If they're above, you can increase your stocking density and potentially look towards aerial seeding of native pasture.
Yeah, Steve-O, that's a big one for me. Every time we get a dry year with strong winds, I'm worried about losing topsoil. Might as well throw my topsoil in the back of the ute and drive it into the neighbours myself. Having shrubs to anchor the paddock would take the pressure off, or put it on.
We do need to think about management, as establishment of perennial forage shrubs can be tricky. In terms of weed control, it is crucial to get on top of weeds early on to avoid them utilising soil moisture that the perennial shrubs will need for establishment. Competition with weeds is particularly pronounced in the first year after planting the perennial shrubs, as they tend to grow slower, so weed control during establishment is essential. In terms of herbicides, there is limited information available about perennial forage species tolerance to herbicides, so they are used for weed control in the inter-row. Try to prevent spray drift onto the forage shrubs, as the potential impact is unknown. In terms of fertiliser inputs, a well-functioning perennial forage shrub system is unlikely to require regular fertiliser input, and if you decide to plant a pasture legume in the inter-row, then there will already be increased soil nutrients likely. Pests to keep an eye out for during establishment include red-legged earth mites and lucerne flea, as these can cause significant damage to young perennial forage shrub seedlings. We'll also need to carefully manage livestock grazing, and this will need to be rotational once the shrubs are established. Ideally, periods of short grazing followed by periods of rest to protect the new growth, allowing it to grow, otherwise they'll get hammered.
Yeah, I've seen people just turn sheep into a saltbush paddock and leave them, and the shrubs don't stand a chance. Sheep are basically fluffy locusts with better PR. The paddocks turn into a desert faster than you can say bad idea, unless you're going for that post-apocalyptic paddock look. So yeah, I'd be happy to rotate mubs through. It'd take a bit of planning, but I see the benefit.
From a livestock perspective, in this area we can make a plan to utilise both a scrub and pasture system. For example, if you join for 6 weeks at the end of October, there's still feed for the ewes to be putting on condition, giving a good conception rate. When the feed is scarce in summer, they have growing shrubs and stubble before lambing down onto new pasture feed in mid-autumn, though you may need to supplement. That way there's plenty of feed available during your peak nutritional demand of late lactation, and then with the spring rains you've got good feed for weaning your lambs. That time of year also gives your ewes the chance to recover condition on good feed, so they're ready for next year's lambs, even if it turns out to be a tough season.
Thanks Mon, that's handy. It means I don't have to cut back stocking rates as much in the drier years. Reliability is worth a lot when you're trying to run a mixed farm out here. There's a running joke around these parts. Forecast says 30% chance of rain, or as we call it out here, 100% chance disappointment.
Oh, hello again. And on top of that, we're learning more about how shrub-based systems can support biodiversity. They provide shelter and feed for stock, but also habitat for native birds, insects and reptiles, which help with whole farm sustainability.
Sounds like a win all round. For me, the key takeaway is that I can use shrubs to turn marginal land into productive feed, reduce erosion risk and have a more reliable system. If that's backed by agronomy, animal science and research, then as a farmer I'm willing to give it a go. And look, if it means for your late night paddock walks wondering where all the feed went, I'm in.